Hi everybody, welcome to Quintessential Rider. Today we are here with a few of our top riders for the Eventing Diaries, which is a platform that we'd like to start about bringing more information about the sport and of course from all our top riders. First of all, we have Gail Foxcroft, who doesn't need any introduction, one of our top riders and previously a top event rider. Paul Hart, currently one of our top riders, eventing. He's been over to WIG. Roxanne, Massaro, one of our top eventing riders. Winn, another one of our top eventing riders who's also now gone into show jumping, who was also at WIG. So being the least experienced rider here, I know why I got into eventing. I was actually at a show jumping show and I broke my hand and I had to go down to help a friend in Natal. And all the riders were so friendly to me in the warm-up. I couldn't understand if they thought I was somebody that I looked like somebody, and then that's when I met all you guys, and obviously that's why I carried on with the eventing, because I just thought the people were so friendly and welcoming and helpful. And I mean, I remember meeting you there and you were so nice to me and I was like, it's Graham Winn, you know. So that's why I stuck with eventing at the end of it.
And it's always a good party.
Yes.
Always a good party.
Always a good party. You can't.
I think it's been very interesting if I look at eventing, and it's only really dawned on me now that I have started show jumping a little bit more, how easy it was to event when you had access to a lot of different outrides, and the production of a young event horse was so much easier. And I found that producing an event horse was a lot easier and easier to understand for the horse than it was in the show jumping, or it is in the show jumping. And it was only now that I haven't been going on outrides and haven't been producing the horse thinking of eventing every day and started to think more about the show jumping, have I realized I've taken such a lot of that natural instinct away from the horses. And what I mean by that is cross country is a very natural thing for a horse to understand. And if you've done your homework, it's easier than most disciplines. If you've done your homework, you've done your outrides, you've taught him to understand the natural different obstacles, he gets very, I'd say, tuned into it, and he can look after himself. There's a lot of self-preservation with a young horse learned from outrides, which is, I'd say in our day, was easier because it wasn't as built up everywhere. But if you are aware of what you're doing, and Paul and Roxanne, you do a lot of the teaching. And if you think of the teaching, you just set out different jumps that would be expected of the horses in the competitions. And that in itself teaches them. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have said to me, Graham, what were your big worries going around across country? And I don't want to sound arrogant, but it didn't worry me. I knew I'd done my homework, my horses were prepared. Whether it was my decision to jump the bigger corner or the skinny, but if you do your homework and the horses are tuned into it, I found that the competitions were easy, especially the cross-country part of it. And whereas the show jumping, I've come across it in a different way. The show jumps, and everyone laughs at me and says it's impossible, the show jumps fall. So you tend to be a little more cautious and take away that natural initiative from the horses and end up making it more difficult for your horse because you're trying possibly not to knock. Whereas in the cross country, the horses are so aware that those poles don't fall, or logs, or whatever it is, that they are very tuned in to the sport. And they make every effort to help themselves. And I just found that very interesting. And it only really started making sense when I started show jumping more and realized that I was becoming more of a burden to my horse than I ever did while I evented, because I was trying to be maybe accurate, or I was trying to be more competitive, and eventing was very natural for me to do, and the horses seemed to really enjoy what they were doing. I mean, I know, Gail, that you have always, whether you were producing an event horse or a show jump or any horse, a young horse, you did most of his training on an outride.
Yeah, we'd be talking about like, we still do that with young horses, but I mean, you talk about like 50, I'm talking about 50 years ago, which is very scary. How did we get so old?
Okay, I've seen on Facebook things that you do with your horses still to this day, that you do a lot of outrides and naturally play over a lot of the natural obstacles.
Yeah, no, we
and
do.
Doing that, you're preparing a horse to actually event. You're preparing a horse to have a little bit of self-initiative, that self-preservation, however you do it, and they learn an incredible balance and an ability to read a situation.
Yeah.
And I think that is why you've done so well in your show jumping. You've always managed to do that with your young horses on outrides. And basically, if we think of it, an outride is a small event, a small cross-country course.
Things many, many years ago were so different. I mean, my mom ran a riding school, like, as I say, 50 years ago, and we always used to go on outrides. If she taught people to ride, she never taught them in the school. They were always taught on outrides. So that was the biggest thing we did. We always went on outrides. You very, very seldom find kids these days doing outrides. Also, it's more built up.
There's not a lot of space.
And another big thing, we used to hunt. We used to go on the hunt, and the hunt, again, has changed hugely over the years because there's nowhere for people to hunt anymore.
You
And
see,
that
Gail,
used
I
to
feel like
encourage
what-
young horses.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
What you just said, but you said in better words than me. You went on outrides. It was relaxed. It was fun. It was natural. You were actually producing your event horse.
Absolutely.
You were producing a horse in a very soft, relaxed environment of an outride. It was a group outride, it was social, you chatted, and the horses were learning without the sort of pressures of a one-on-one lesson of what to do. And it, unfortunately, with the competition the way it's going now, in whatever field you choose, whether it's dressage, eventing, show jumping, there's a lot of, I believe, unfortunate pressure put on both horse and rider to succeed. And often it's misread, and the horses become tense, they become worried about it. There's a sense of anxiety in the horses. And a horse that is produced under anxiety or anxious type feel never ever learns that absolute, for me, trust in the riders and himself, which is more important.
But also, talking about horses doing different things, I read a really good article about keeping horses sound. And the most important thing about keeping horses sound when you're training them hard is cross-training. So it is outrides, dressage, show jumping, fitness work. It's not just one thing. It's not just in the school or whatever. So
It's mental fitness as well.
Yeah,
Surely that's
there's a
better
hell
for
of
the
a lot
horse
of
to
that.
do a very
Cross-training.
It makes horses much happier
Yeah.
to do different things
Yeah.
rather
Exactly.
than one thing in a school every day over and over.
Yeah.
If you hack and change what you do, horses are a lot happier in their work.
Interesting with that, I can remember Lucinda Green, one of the world will know her for what her achievements were in the sport, had just come from a safari in Kenya and was talking about how the horses were so sound, doing so many different things with undulating ground, and she was comparing it to the horses that are being produced on these perfect level, perfect going, and they were picking up more injuries with those horses that were produced daily on the perfect going. And she said that was so important to do what you mentioned, a bit of cross training. It's in the interest of the horse to do lots of different ups and downs and keep him tuned in with his limbs. I mean, and often people said with eventing, eventing in Africa, the going is not always favorable, it's really hard. But I've yet to see horses really break on hard. They are more often broken on the soft, perfect going. So, that's what I'm just trying to say with eventing. There's so many positives with eventing. It's a lot more natural for a horse. And you can keep a horse really happy and very fit and sort of sound well into a later career than a lot of other disciplines. And
So would you
is it that the going sort of hardens them up? I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know so much about that, but when you're doing all your training for an event, if you come to an event and the ground is hard, that's how many kilometers of hard, one day of hard, whereas you would be training at home, you'd be training on decent going.
No,
So
absolutely.
you're not going
Even though
to
they're
break them
outright,
down by that.
we
you're
are
talking about
based
outrights,
on
yeah.
outrights. That's where I'm talking about with our outrights. We try to find the best going all the time. That is hugely important. But what I was trying to get across is that I didn't not compete at an event if the going was a little hard. Maybe I didn't ride as hard as I would have.
Yeah, and
I'm
the time.
aware of that. but definitely too soft going
It's worse.
throughout is actually worse
Yeah.
than this cross sort of
Yeah.
cross terrain, if you could
Yeah.
do that, different types of terrain to keep a horse really hard.
So I also take my dressage horse and do a hell of a lot of eventing type obstacles as well. Most of the time I'll take him through water complexes, over small little cross-country fences, again undulating, different terrain, and I think it's built a lot of confidence and trust in the horse. And then when he goes to a dressage show, things like going from an uneven surface into the main arena doesn't bother him. Seeing different flags or seeing the judge, and he's very trusting in me. And I think it definitely comes from that building of that relationship, going and doing a lot of outrights and cross-country training, and even the show jumping training on him. He doesn't necessarily do dressage every single day. It would drive me mad as well.
That trust of seeing different things all the time,
Yes.
that is a huge factor in your
Yeah.
horse,
Yeah.
trusting you and doing things that they don't see in the ring.
Exactly.
But it does take different horses to do different parts of the
Oh,
sport.
for sure.
Event horses are braver and they're different to show jumpers, I believe.
Yeah.
Even though I think as they're breeding better and better horses, you're seeing better and better horses eventing than you did maybe 30 years ago. But it takes a special horse to event.
Yeah.
So even though I think every horse needs to hack and do different things, I think when we event, we look for a braver horse, a horse that'll
Do it
really
even for
try
us, yeah.
and
Okay, so just to put a spanner in your works there,
Yeah.
didn't you see that thing that Charles Baker put on Facebook the other day? Which rider and horse won the South African Eventing Championships and the South African Show Jumping Championships?
Really?
And it was George Marburg on the lad.
Gee.
He won it, I think, the SA Show Jumping Championships in 1966 on the lad, and then in 1967 the Eventing Championships.
I wasn't even
So
thought
he
of
was
then. I don't think
amazing.
my parents even
but
met
then
then.
thoroughbreds can do anything.
No, absolutely.
Yes.
Look at
Yeah.
Sarah Pennell, Sarah De La Haye's horse.
Yes, Claire
that
West.
horse, Claire West, jumped eventing at the top level, show jumped at the top level and did medium dressage, all on a thoroughbred. And you know, Paul, I was just listening to you when you were
And
saying
merely a
you need-
monarch with
Annalie.
Annalie.
Yeah. Different horses for eventing or different horses for show jumping. I don't know if they really
To a
differ.
certain extent.
Their preparation
Is
differs
different,
then.
yeah.
Because those days of people saying, Graham, we've got the show jumper, it's not very careful, but it
Yeah.
really is brave and bold.
we don't want it.
Would you be able to? No, thank you.
No, thank
For
you.
eventing,
Thank
you
you.
actually want incredible sharpness.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
want self-preservation. You want a horse to be, you want
Watching.
to get an
But you do
event
want the
horse that the
bravery.
show jumpers would say, wow, imagine that show jumping that horse. That's the type of horse you want to try and event now. And I think a lot of it comes from the preparation of that horse from early on. I'd love to sit on an event horse that really threw a jump that would be impressive in the show jumping by just technique. I'm not talking over jumping,
Yeah.
but just with absolute front leg technique.
That was the Magus was like that.
Yeah,
The horse
yeah.
he won. I mean, he did really well show jumping and eventing. He was very careful. Pit Special was
Yes.
another horse that did both sports really, really well. There've been a hell of a lot of thoroughbreds that have done both.
And I think it's also interesting when you talk of that, the riders in the Western Cape, or in Cape Town in particular, because they do
They have
they're
to do all
not
the
just
disciplines, yeah.
eventing shows or just show jumping. A lot of them did a lot of different disciplines,
Yeah.
and those horses coped in both levels,
Yeah,
well up
exactly.
into
Yeah.
open show jumping. They evented, so that's what goes back to the preparation
Yeah.
and what they are used to.
Well, I mean, my
It's really
mare show jumps when we have the time. Obviously, I mean, prepping them for eventing all the time. When I have a chance, we take a gap and go show jumping shows at 120 level, and she does dressage shows as regularly as possible to keep her mind nice and solid and straight, so that dressage isn't so exciting.
Yeah.
She knows cross-country jumps are coming.
You're not allowed to say that to the dressage people.
Paul, I think you were involved when there was an event in Katu of all places. And what I'm trying to get at here is venues, if they pop up and they're really quality little venues, it encourages those show jumpers to come, eventing and no, go really.
Can't be sure.
If you have a venue or an enthusiastic committee that really put on a good show and the going, everything is perfect, it attracts the locals to give it a go.
The
the
locals.
No,
Yes,
the
yes.
locals. That's what I'm
I
trying to
thought
say.
you were
No,
saying
so whereas if
show
you
jumpers en
would
masse.
just show jump and you were at an area that was started running really good shows, and I'm thinking of say down in Cape Town or when I go up to Zimbabwe, those horses do a little bit of everything because they have access to the most beautiful venue there.
Yeah.
So everyone wants to give it a try. Sure, if they want 20 horses and they go around the 80 centimetre track to give them a go, it encourages it. So a lot of the sport is actually boosted by the facility or the venue.
Definitely.
Yeah,
does.
you also talk about smaller riding communities.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's not like if you had the most beautiful venue with cross country here, well, you have got a beautiful venue, but say everything was just perfect for anybody. I don't see the show jumpers.
No, only
you won't
because
get
they've got so much of their own.
But that's what
Yeah,
I'm
there's
saying.
so
many
It's
shows
in the
for them.
smaller
Yeah.
communities.
I'm
only.
talking the smaller communities and that. And we were talking about the
Klet.
Western Province, how successful their so-called cross-discipline riding was,
Yeah.
because there wasn't enough show jumping,
Yeah.
pure show jumping, just to specialise in
Yeah.
show jumping. And we mentioned a place like a little mining village there that had a beautiful venue,
Yeah.
but everyone tried it.
Yeah.
Because it was there.
Yeah.
And that's where I think if we could, the beauty of eventing, I don't want to say it's a little more amateur, but it can encourage a low level to have great fun.
No, absolutely.
And
It is the best way to start your young horses is
Absolutely.
doing eventing for sure.
And as riders, because you become brave,
Yeah, and
you
you get to
become
do 3
you
classes
trust your
in
horse,
one
and you get
show.
really balanced as well.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting, and I think it's different now that riders have specialised from so-called cross-country and show jumping, but you watch the cross-country and you see these riders let their horses just travel forward and how clever they are and how good, and it just looks so connected. And then that same rider, and I can talk for myself because the next day when I show jump, I tried something like I had to really be different, and I invariably upset the horses.
Yeah.
So, and I even saw that at the top levels overseas where some riders would go around the cross country and say, wow, what a picture. That same picture the next day show jumping wasn't quite there.
Yeah.
Because the riders, and I can talk from my own experiences, start doing a little too much to help their horses and interfere anyway.
So
Okay,
how
but
did you
why-
change that then? How did you stop doing that? What did you
No,
do?
just before we go any further, he starts saying about how badly he show jumped. How many flippant times was I 1 point behind you at SHS and you didn't knock a pole?
Not a pole.
And I was second. How many
I
times?
could lift my horse higher than
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, those elbows worked hard, eh? Those elbows worked hard.
No, Gail, I hear what you're saying. I have been fortunate. I put it down to preparation. I prepared the horses. I don't know, I had incredible horses while
You
I
shouldn't. You
evented.
must be careful of the word prepare. The horse.
Yeah,
Okay,
got lots
the
of
phrase.
connotations.
Yes, yes.
but that's from a show jumping. It's just an event. I prepared, do my homework.
So that was what you were doing.
I know, Graham, when you stopped eventing a couple of years ago, the numbers were really, really high, and it seems to have dwindled a little bit in the last couple of years. And I mean, I just love eventing. I tell everyone to come eventing, and it's such a fun weekend, and it's always, everyone's always helpful and friendly to you, and we always have the best times. But how are we going to get people to come back to eventing?
Hang on, let
interesting.
me chip in. It's because he stopped eventing. That's why.
Sarah, in a way, it sort of makes you feel sad when you say, and Graham, you've stopped eventing. Eventing's still very much part of me. I enjoy the instruction. I enjoy being involved. But to go back to why I think there's been a change in it, I was part of that group and very, very privileged, very lucky to be part of the campaign to get 5 riders to the World Equestrian Games in Kentucky overseas. It was something no other discipline had done, that they'd taken their own horses and gone and campaigned overseas. It was an unbelievable experience, probably something, the biggest experience of a lifetime for me. And what happened was, to get us qualified, we were starting to get course designers to come into this country to help us qualify. So it was a win-win situation. They came in.
Also instructors.
And
coaches, yeah.
And I've always said that
Jean-Philippe.
course design influences the direction of a sport. It influences the way horses are bred. It influences the way horses are prepared. But most important, it created a vibe. It created an unbelievable sense of, look how they are doing it overseas. These international course designers are coming out, designing a track. The instructors looked at that. They had to up their game to teach their pupils how to cope with the demands of the modern sport.
follow.
Yeah.
And what was more important than anything, our course designers could watch, see, and maybe try keep up with the way they saw it. And what happened is we actually qualified our horses here in South Africa to go over there, and it was huge. And then we found that the lower grades were entering those shows to watch those few riders compete around that huge track. So it was a win-win situation. The atmosphere, the involvement from
The excitement.
parents, kids, everything, it was just growing. The sport was then at its highest.
Yeah.
And it was
And
attractive to everyone.
Yeah,
it was
unbelievable.
very-
Yeah.
So everyone could see it. Everyone could see how well designed the tracks were. They looked safer. They were big jumps, but they were built in a
And
safe
beautifully
way.
dressed.
And it just, for me, I was very proud to be part of the eventing discipline. How they all rallied around to get us to go and qualify. They stood behind us. I can remember riding around Northern Farms, and I was a bit behind the clock, and I could hear the crowd shouting, "Go!" Not because they wanted me to win; they wanted me to qualify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I get goosebumps talking about it. It was unbelievable, the atmosphere. So here we had little kids that were riding in the 80 centimeter class. Their parents, who were new to the sport, got part of this cheering and shouting.
drive,
They maybe didn't quite know what they were shouting at, but everyone was shouting, so they shouted. And the crowd got me around there. I just got in, but I got in. And what happened after that was, I think, there was this huge drive to get us over. And when we came back, everything seemed to slow down. They stopped bringing in the top designers. Unfortunately, those top courses were lowered to accommodate the heights of the lower grades. But it
That
was
you
unfair
don't-
question, an
yeah.
unfair question.
Totally.
And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
all that just nibbled away at the popularity of the sport and its demand. And you never ever grow a sport from the base. People would like to,
Yeah.
because maybe for venues it's more profitable to have a very big base at the bottom. But the top riders pull the sport.
Always.
And when you
Yeah.
took that initiative and the drive away from those top riders, it fell flat.
Yeah.
We all felt eventing in South Africa fell back into that unfortunate rut of just ticking along.
And you never improve a sport by dropping the standard.
standard,
no.
You never do. And that's, I think, also a huge mistake that's been made. Yeah.
And all those courses have been put down and changed. And, you know, they took them from being 3-star or 4-star now down fences. And they were never rideable as a meter
Yeah.
fence
No,
or
no,
in the
absolutely.
position they were too difficult. And so it put a lot of people off.
It did put a lot of people
And
off.
those lovely courses that were there, all gone.
Yeah.
But saying that again, I just, thanks to Facebook, just look at this new venue in Natal.
Mount Helmsley. It's
You know,
absolutely
it's
stunning.
all about a venue, and then I go up to
Zim-
Azaluna and to
that is
Arlington in
magnificent.
Zimbabwe, and
That's magnificent.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were growing the sport, so
Yeah.
it's not like it
But-
can't get back to what it was, Gail.
But
They
Graham,
can
with-
do it here.
Yeah, but with getting the international course designers and stuff out, was that not really expensive to get for qualifying? I remember you used to have FEI judges and stuff like that. Is that not one of the factors that's made it too expensive to bring all these people out?
Gail, absolutely, it is. It's not like the only reason. It just got
It's one
too
of them.
expensive.
Yeah.
It was one of them, but because the momentum was going,
Yeah.
we now I can look back and say, if only we had.
Yeah.
Because what happened was, with the top instructors and officials coming out, they were qualifying home officials.
Yeah.
So
Okay, yeah.
More people.
it would have become cheaper because
Yeah.
we had everything now becoming qualified in
Yeah.
an official capacity here in South Africa. So, anyway, you asked me, Sarah, what I felt has sort of brought it down, the sort of popularity of it, but it's there. This new venue in Natal, I've
Yes.
just heard so many good things about it.
Fantastic.
And then when you go up to Zimbabwe and I look and I think, I'd love to do it again.
Yeah.
And that, just the good venues and the enthusiasm behind the venues is what, could get us all eventing again.
Yeah.
It's not like I don't want to event again.
Yeah.
I would love to. I'd love to.
I think another factor also about why the coaches maybe aren't coaching eventing. Also, it's more time consuming. It's much easier to do a 45-minute or an hour lesson with someone in the school than to take someone out into the field, because if you go and do something out in the country,
It's 2 hours.
yeah, and you have to be able to, if you come across a problem there, you have to be able to sort it then and there. You can't leave it for another day. So I think it's a big time is a big factor.
And parents also don't want to sit at a horse show all weekend. So today a lot of the parents want to go to a show, let their kids jump 2 classes and be home by lunchtime. So
But now you say that you
Yeah, so
sorting
now
out one day
there's a really good program that we've put in place is starting to make a lot of the shows, especially in the lower grades, one-day events. So it's less time consuming, it's less money that you're having to put into it. And it's actually really, really good for the venues as well, because they're having to just be there for that one day, and they can
so many officials and they just
so
one
many
day.
less people
But
involved.
Also, that's what's been always, that one-day events have been huge overseas.
Yes,
Yes.
huge.
Yeah.
Very,
Other
very
than the
big.
big 3 days or whatever,
sure,
everything is one day.
Yeah, and that is a good thing. I mean, Graham, again, from a training point of view, our normal everyday shows, a one day does make a lot of sense. And then you prepare for your SA champs or your Gauteng champs into provincials, where you're going to run it over 2 or 3 days.
No, definitely. I think it's just also the sort of modern demands of the children and even the scholars, varsity student parents. There's just so much on the go that it is. But no one can tell me it's more expensive than show jumping. It's
not,
an expensive sport across the board.
Exactly.
That's what it is. But the way that a lot of venues are starting as well is to run off time slots. Nothing to do with what we're going through at the moment, but just time slots of your dressage, then out into the cross country and show jumping, all happening, and you can be finished in 3 hours. So
definitely.
even that, I just think that if a lot of the venues became so-called user-friendly and realised that if we're going to build the sport up and get it going again, we've got to try and get riders in and out, parents to be enthusiastic, watch a bit of dressage, watch a show jumping and cross country and go home, and just keep it moving. And I think if we all got together and we spoke about how we can get more numbers in eventing, though it starts a lot at the venues and how they program themselves to do it.
Yeah.
So,
and then it also has to be a lot to do with being able to train all people. So when they go to a show, they're successful.
Yeah.
Parents don't want to take children to a show when they haven't trained correctly, and it takes a lot of effort now because we don't have, like you said, a lot of outrides and that. So you have to build a lot of the training stuff out in the fields and on the banks, and so it takes a lot of time and effort to do that.
And I think a lot more expensive now. That would be that side of it, because if you think of your portables and stuff, that's serious bucks to build those fences.
But they last. I mean, you can take portables
Anyway,
they
to
can
any
last,
venue, which is great.
and they last for years if they're looked after.
Yeah.
So
That's the great thing about all the portables, is that we can move them from each venue and put them strategically in different places to either train over or compete over, and it's really good. Makes a lot of sense.
Just talking about how we can get numbers through. I know personally for me, it's just about me wanting to get motivated again. And if there's a will, there's a way. If you want to really go and teach, and you're involved in it and you see what's happening and you attract riders again, it's all up to me. If I decide I'm going to do it, I can do it. But no one is going to go and
Do it for you.
do it for me.
Yeah.
Or when you wait there and say that it'll just happen. It's got to, the instructors can make it happen.
No, you've
The
got to
venues
drive
can
it.
make
Someone
happen.
has to drive it.
You have to drive it, and then it's driven. Eventing is really, it's such a great discipline.
So get off your ass
So
and
when you're
drive
joining
it.
us, you can have my thoroughbred.
Now that's put you on the spot.
You're blushing a little bit.
You can ride Lucy any day.
Yeah.
I know 2019 we had that amazing show at in Zim, and I think a lot of the surrounding countries are starting off now, again with getting their venues going. How do you feel about the different venues?
Yeah, well, again, right in the beginning of the conversation, I was talking about the enthusiasm of a venue committee and how they can attract numbers. There's lovely shows in Zambia, Zimbabwe, Namibia. Those are shows that are happening, that we part of this sort of global kind of education program, that I have an opportunity to go to those different venues. And it says good, yeah, really good. And if it was just, unfortunately, the border crossing and getting the horses across the border, that makes it a little bit more difficult. But if we could sort out horses getting across the border and back into South Africa easier, they would be supported.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem.
They are, the venues and the shows are good enough to go.
Yeah,
that without a question. But the big thing is, do you want a chance taking your horse and having him wait at the border, or having paperwork incorrect? But again, that unfortunately is on the negative side. But to answer your question, yes, it's happening in other countries.
Well, I mean, Sarah, you and I, we've both gone. I mean, my first trip to Zim was in 2016, and it's they have looked after us so well. And again, as Graham speaks about the fact that they've put so much effort into the tracks and the courses and the venues are outstanding.
They really looked after us.
And it's a great atmosphere again. I mean, we went with there were 22 of us.
Yeah.
A contingency of 22 South Africans
Oh, really?
went over. We all
Fantastic,
boxed down
amazing.
together. They flew together, and we all stayed together in 2 houses. It was a great team, and I think it's so good that again we've created an Africa Shield,
Yes.
which is very much aimed for the younger riders and the more inexperienced lower grades, which then encourages them to be able to start thinking about getting their colours, travelling, being on teams and that sort of thing. And then they do obviously the higher African Nations Cup. And again, it creates
So
so
just-
much energy.
So just tell me, why don't we know about any of this? I knew nothing about this Africa.
And it's been
Stuff.
happening since 2016. We've been
So
going.
what are you guys doing wrong that you're not putting it out there, that everybody knows about it? It needs to be out there,
Yeah,
that people
that's
know
another
that these
thing.
opportunities
Yeah.
are
We've
out
seen.
there for
With
people.
you bringing that up,
That's actually
obviously
good.
it hasn't been advertised
Yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
so we
Yeah.
got to go and do it. But if someone out there, any of the viewers, whoever, could help us with getting through the border controls, and
Yes.
that type
That's
of
a big-
paperwork,
Yeah.
then,
Then we'll be.
and I think it would be a win-win situation for eventing in South Africa as well, to try and get together. With me being involved with Zimbabwe when you all came
Yeah.
up, to watch you all on the podium there and the crowds, it was fantastic. You know, it was the closest I've seen to what we went through
And-
in
very
Kentucky.
well. Yeah.
You know, it was on a different scale,
Yeah.
but it was unbelievable to see that the small kids that were doing the 90 centimeters standing there with all of you who were
They loved
doing the
it.
2-star, and it was one big group of
One big
enthusiastic
family.
people.
It was fantastic.
It was lovely.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's the paperwork that's the problem, because you've always got the correct paperwork.
Yeah.
The delays are unnecessary, and I don't know that can ever be resolved.
Yeah, well, so if
It'll
that
hold
can
it
be,
back.
it'll be, we'll support,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
and they'll come down here easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's unbelievable that what the Zimbabwe and Zambian riders go through to come to South Africa.
Yeah.
But we've had it
And
a
we
bit
don't make the
easy, so we
effort.
don't really make
Yeah.
the effort
Yeah.
to go back there, which is unfair
Yeah.
because they make the effort,
Yeah.
And they put on a good show.
They
and
do.
and they really do.
Well, I mean, remember every year we used to go to Forskirch in Namibia.
Yeah.
And I mean, Reinhardt and Karen Forst used to run the most fantastic event, and that was a world-class event.
Absolutely.
And you
I
haven't
still
done a
have,
lot of Swaziland shows.
No.
photographs of those jumps there. Reinhardt then was building courses that we hadn't seen in South Africa.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
was world standard.
Yeah.
I mean, to go around those courses was unbelievable. But there were no border issues.
Yeah.
No
No,
border
exactly.
issues.
Yeah.
Tell us your favorite achievements in eventing and how you can encourage and get people to come back to the sport.
Well, I don't know that I can encourage anyone to come back, but probably the what I think of as my best achievement eventing was when I was 19. when I won SA champs for the first time, eventing champs on Desert King. He was mad. He was a thoroughbred. And I had the worst dressage. He went reefing down the scent line when he had to canter down the scent line. He was reefing. And my dad was the only one who put money on me to win the class. And luckily, Corin Manette took the wrong course. And the cross country was very difficult. And yeah, my horse won, and that was when I was 19. So he was a fantastic horse. And a week later, went and jumped in the big classes at Rancho.
Wow.
Jesus.
So I mean, then that was a horse that could do eventing and show jumping.
Sure.
So yeah, I suppose that's it.
And Paul?
I think qualifying to go to WIG was most probably my biggest achievement, and then staying on and competing in Europe. I think I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and it was just unfortunate that more people, or what I wanted was younger people to realize it was doable, and it hasn't seemed to have happened. And
Similar
that's
to what
sad.
Lisa did now in the show jumping
You want
side. It's
people-
just very expensive.
You want people to believe that they
Can
can
get
do
there.
it, and they
Yeah.
can get there, and it's doable, and the riders in South Africa are good enough to go overseas and ride and compete. I don't believe you can just go over and win. I think
Yes.
you've got to spend
Oh,
time
yeah.
there, and
You've got to up your game when
and
you
up
get
your
there.
game, and you learn fast. But I really do think South African riders are up to it. So
Well, that's what everyone says when they come here. All the instructors, the course designers.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
So
It's a given.
Yeah.
Rox?
Achievements, yes. I think, again, riding for South Africa in Zim on 2 occasions now has been something that was great for me, but I want to aspire to what Graham and Paul have done, and I believe it is possible. I think if we put our minds to it and put the effort in, and have the likes of Graham and even Gail, because there's so much we can learn from you,
Yeah.
and Paul helping and you getting there again,
Yes.
I think it is doable, and for me that would be an achievement. But having ridden for my province so many times, and us having great shows and going to Zim, those experiences, more than just the winning of it, the experiences are for me the best part.
And Graham, we know you've got a lot, so you've got 2 minutes, go.
No, I would rather go on what Roxanne's just said about if you think of achievements. I put my achievements to what it created around me with the enthusiasm, not only from my family, but supporters, and how it pulled the sport. And if I had to look back, there wasn't one actual win that was any different. It was just the so-called following. And if I could put it, the heart to it, those were my achievements of what I could do in the sport, rather than I did this, I won that, or I won that. I'd like
Okay,
to
but
look
let's
back
just
at
cut
it.
to the chase.
How many
The only
times did you win
person
SA
She's
Champs?
won SA Champs 10 times.
Was it
More
10?
than. It's
Is it
13.
10? Oh!
13 times.
Actually, it's 14.
50.
Okay, but 10 times in a row. I mean, that's ridiculous.
But Gail, that's why I was saying that, to go and say I won that. Yeah, I was part of the team to go overseas with Paul. That was fantastic. But I'm not just trying to be modest or play it down. But if I look at it, it was just the whole drive that was behind me to get me into that position each year.
Do you know one
And
thing
that belief
that I
of it.
think is much bigger in eventing than in show jumping is the camaraderie
Oh,
Yes,
It's huge.
definitely.
between the people, because it is you spend the whole day together. You have huge highs and huge disappointments, which is exactly the same in show jumping, but it's slightly different in eventing. And I think there's a major camaraderie
Great
that
mates.
about
Yes.
here.
I definitely think so. And but it's happening a bit in show jumping
Yeah.
as well.
No, it
I
does
do
happen.
see that, but
It does
what
happen, but
happens
not to
is,
the same
like in
extent.
eventing, we would walk the different courses because it all happened at different levels on the same day.
Yeah.
So you could have the young riders walking with
Yeah.
you, and it was definitely, when I say closer to home, closer family type
Yeah.
competing. And so I look back and it's great. It really, I've had a fantastic innings with eventing, and that's what we said in the beginning. I'd love to stay part of it. Those are sort of becoming more important achievements now.
But you
is
talk
to try
about
and put
walking
it
the
back.
course. Walking a show jumping course is 5 minutes. Walking an eventing course is an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're with people a lot more,
Yeah.
and that's what I think develops a camaraderie.